I feel that voice overall is neither a buy problem nor a build problem. I actually think it's an integration problem. One of the key things that AI can do, right, is to drive hyper personalization at scale.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us today. I'm Sneha, co-founder and COO at Murf AI. I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce with me our guest for today, Vijay Rajagopal from AWS. He leads the BFSI charter in terms of GTM for AWS, and he brings in 2 decades of experience with him across Amazon Pay, ICICI. I'd cover a little bit more on Vijay in just a bit, but super excited to have you with us, Vijay, on this webinar.
Thanks, Neha. I think it's a pleasure to be on this webinar. Really excited about the conversation that's coming up. I'm sure it'll be a learning experience for all of us, right? And thanks to you and to the Murf team for making this happen. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Vijay. We have a bunch of attendees already joining in, and we'd get started for today. This is a conversation I've been wanting to have for a while, since I met Vijay for the first time at Murf. We talk to teams a lot every week who are either building or deploying their voice agents. Some are, taking a build approach, some are taking a buyout approach, all different kinds of approaches that we see in this industry. But BFSI is a space where I have seen the most excitement and the most hesitation, if I may say so, at the same time. That's why it's really, really interesting. Getting a voice agent, live inside a regulated bank with real customers is sometimes a completely different story, right? So in this edition of the Murf AI Webinar Series, I thought that who better to invite than Vijay Rajagopal. I think from his 2 decades of experience across Amazon Pay, PayPal, Zeta, ICICI, and now AWS, I think he's seen so much of this industry from the inside out, and he's really a great person for us to chat with to understand how these things really really go, right? So the agenda for today is that we'll chat for about half an hour, and you could drop your questions on chat anytime for me or for Vijay. Feel free to sort of shoot that out, as we go through it. But we'll be taking the Q&A, at the end of the first part of the session. Yeah, so we're excited to sort of hear more questions from the audience as well, right? Okay, Vijay. So it's great to have you here. Welcome again, and let's get started. I think at the very heart of it, I think the audience would love to understand what makes, according to you, BFSI so different from every other industry when it comes to, deploying voice agents in front of customers, in your view.
Absolutely, Sneha. And I'll start with the customer perspective first, and then we'll get into why it is so different when it comes to voice. So I think the unique thing about a financial institution, it could be a bank, it could be an insurance firm, it could even be a fintech or an NBFC, is that say where there is a customer grievance or a complaint, right? And when not addressed, it could actually mean loss of trust or money, or it could be a regulatory challenge, right? Like, and those things makes it very unique when it comes to this sector. So let's say you take, I'll just take for example, let's say you take e-commerce or retail. Say if there is a delay in shipment, or there is a prolonged experience that's happening with the customer service. Customers, yeah, it'll annoy them, but they'll be okay with it. In the case of say a wrong situation from a BFSI standpoint where they lose money, it's a complete no-no from a customer standpoint, right? So what that happens is that it automatically elevates the need for a higher degree of compliance, higher degree of governance, regulation, and so on. Okay, so in some sense, if I were to say in BFSI, trust is the product, Okay, so that's the currency that customers are dealing with. So it's very, very important to keep that right. And I do say this, right? Trust compounds fast, distrust compounds faster, right? Because one inconvenient experience or a wrong experience, and customers are very, very hesitant to go back to that institution. Okay, so it's very important to keep that very right. So trust is very important. Second, like you rightly mentioned, it's a regulated space. Okay, so it is very important to explain what one is doing, and more importantly, why one is doing that. Okay, so it's very regulated in that sense. Third, it's a fairly complex system. What I mean by that is financial institutions now, a lot of them have a history of tech infrastructure, products that have come in recent times, which are having to work with systems that have been there for, in some cases, almost decades. So it's a very complex infrastructure which one is dealing with, right? So to get a agent deployed, you're having to deal with CRM systems, back office systems, ledgers, core banking systems, etc., etc. So these three things make it very different, Sneha. So trust, regulation, and the complexity.
Got it. I think, yeah, I think the first point certainly is something for everyone to take back. I think trust is the product when it comes to BFSI, and when you compound that with the complexity you spoke about, in your third point, I think that makes it all a lot more interesting and a lot more harder to deploy. So Vijay, in your like 2 decades of seeing these complexities from the industry inside out, how would you today describe the Indian BFSI industry when it comes to deploying? Where is it in the voice AI journey, would you say?
Yeah, I would say, Sneha, the last 18 months have been very exciting, honestly. 18 months ago, it was all about Gen AI, what pilots can we drive, what can we see. People were just tiptoeing in some sense. It has moved very fast to, right now where we are looking at agent-driven outcomes. Okay, and the question is no longer whether to deploy a voice agent, it's how fast and how safe and so on, right? So that's the biggest difference that we are seeing. And we get to work at AWS with a lot of our customers, right? And in some sense, we are grateful for the privilege of seeing up close what's working and more importantly, what's not working, right? So we are able to share those experiences, and I'll share some of that today in this conversation. So broadly, Sneha, we are seeing three sets of customers, okay, in this voice journey. The first set of customers are still experimenting, exploring. They're doing the POCs. They're trying to see what's working and so on. They're trying to see what's the right set of guardrails and systems that need to be in place. Okay. Then there are a second set of customers who have gotten onto this bandwagon. They are looking at scaling these voice systems across their products, across, say, hundreds of thousands of customers, reliably, safely, and securely. Okay, that's the second set of customers that we are seeing. And the third set of customers, and it's a small set, but I'm sure it will grow very fast, are what I'm really calling as transformers. Okay, so they are now, they've started on the journey, they have gotten better at it. Now they're increasingly trying to see how can I get to perfection. Okay, how do I now take this win in a few segments of products to other products? Okay, how do I expand my use cases? If I started with 3 use cases, how can I say double it? Right? How do I make sure that I'm controlling and reducing costs on a continuous basis per call? So these are the transformers. Okay, so that is how the industry is maturing, right? And in some sense, if I were to say, Sneha, I think 2024 is when we had a lot of pilots. People were just getting onto this. 2025, we saw deployments starting to happen, and I'm sure you at Murf, would have seen that quite closely as well. I'm seeing this year and the next year as the years of really scaling these into a large scale.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, Vijay. I think rightly said, in the last year or so, we've also seen enormous traction on this use case with our customers at Murf as well. And I think you're right about that category of transform customers evolving. Would you like to share with the audience today some of the use cases that you've seen, go from the pilot stage in 2024 that we spoke about to a lot more production grade, rollout now in 2026?
Absolutely. So there are three categories of use cases that we're increasingly seeing customers adopt. The first set of use cases are around customer service. Okay, so how can I handle customer queries safely, securely, and with a high level of accuracy? Say these could be queries around card statements, balance enquiries, loan enquiries, etc., etc. These are service set of queries. Second set of use cases around collections and reminders. How do I remind customers about their EMI payments, loan repayment schedules, etc., etc. The third set of use cases around sales and onboarding. Okay, how do I sell a new product to my customer? For an existing product, how do I make their onboard more seamless? Okay, how do I upsell more products to an existing customer? Right. So those are the third set of use cases that we are seeing, Sneha. And customers, each one of them bases their legacy and what is priority for them, are starting with one of the three. Right. In some cases, with more than one as well. But we are seeing broadly these three categories really taking shape.
Got it. Got it. I think the outbound sort of sales reminders and all our use cases we see also all the time. The first two have also witnessed that. I think they have a very fine balance where, in customer inbound support, there is that opportunity to really service the customer then and there without the need to sort of wait on a hold or line or go through any complex queries. There's a lot of value there. At the same time, I think reminders are a great way for companies to be able to sort of service customers a lot better at scale without the need. But according to you, like, if you were to pick a use case that you think is still underutilized but has like immense potential, which one would that be among these?
Yeah. So I think that's a very good question, by the way, because a lot of the use cases are right now centering on cost reduction from the partner standpoint or from the provider standpoint. Right? I mean, how do I reliably reduce costs for the customer? And customers naturally are centered around that. I think what would be very interesting to see is how can voice agents really drive growth? Okay. And one of the things that at least I have seen, and I've been telling that to my teams as well, is one of the key things that AI can do, right, is to drive hyper personalization at scale. Think about it, right? So it is very difficult for human based systems to drive hyper personalization. You need to increase people linearly. With AI, you can hyper personalize it to each customer, and you can do that at scale. Okay. And no better than voice to be able to do that for a customer. So think about it. So let's say there is a customer who has idle balances sitting in their bank account. Okay. So, or a customer who has never taken an insurance in their life and he or she needs some guidance around it. Okay. Or they have balances which they would be looking for investment recommendations, maybe an SIP, but they have really nobody to go to. Okay, so here we are really talking about intelligent AI systems which understands the customer, which with the right set of guardrails and disclosures helps the customer do any of these actions, right? First guides them, then bases the customer consent, helps them also to execute these transactions. I think that there is a large play there, which folks are not looking at closely now, obviously because there are other use cases that are that are right now driving the market. But in my mind, Sneha, I think investment guidance, recommendation, advisory can really take off in a large way. Think about it. I think if you look at the millions of customers that India has, I think a lot of them have needs which can be served through vernacular languages, right? And we are already seeing that with voice AI, which can adapt to different languages and talk to customers basis their language. And we all know that, especially when you go to tier 3, tier 4 towns, voice is so much more convenient for customers. Okay, so in some sense, voice actually becomes a way to include them into the financial ecosystem. And if you think about that, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, inclusion makes it very powerful. right? So inclusion really makes it very powerful, and I think that's a way through which we can leverage these agents and systems, and I think that could be quite transformational.
Got it. Yeah, makes complete sense. Is there a particular rollout, Vijay, that sort of really made you sit back and and take notice? Any implementation that you can recall in with any of your BFSI customers?
Okay, I'll tell you a pattern that I've been seeing in successful deployments. Okay, and maybe that could be something that could help the audience as well. So we have seen successful deployments really start with the business problem outlined first. Okay, so it is not that, okay, now I have this technology, let me go and deploy it. It's more in terms of, okay, I have this business problem, right? And I really need to address this. What is the ROI I'm looking at? How do I process, the customer journey, the outcomes, the metrics? I think customers who start with that and then work backwards as to now which technology will make this work, though they have seen the success, right? And we have seen customers who adopt this approach derive success across any of those three categories I mentioned, right? Whether it is customer service, collections, sales, etc. But this framework is important, and I think that's the framework that I would really suggest for those who are looking to embark on this journey. Please make sure that one is not approaching it saying that, okay, hey, which is the best model, or what's the best performance I can get, or who's the best provider. I think that comes later. That comes once the problem is identified, the metrics are frozen, the outcomes are understood in terms of what is expected, and then one works backwards. They have seen much higher levels of success.
Got it. I think that point is sort of very related to the next question I was about to ask, which is that we see a lot of deployments again in different stages. And while we spoke about a lot of them moving to production, for every I would say pilot that moves to production, there are still a lot of pilots that are still stuck at that stage. And maybe one of the big reasons is, like you described, that the intent in itself is
Yes.
what we're trying to do with that as a business is kind of unclear. But yeah, I mean, what would be your thoughts on the big reasons why some of these get stuck at pilots in BFSI?
And I think that's a common issue that we're facing. I think we were seeing the statistics that almost 75% of pilots don't go to production amongst our customer set. Okay, I mean, they are stalled, or the priorities change, or they're discarded, right? Like, so what we've really seen is that there are three things which happen, Sneha. I think the first thing that happens is that, especially when an AI project starts, sometimes in customers there is unclear ownership. Okay, so because unlike a core tech project, this is a business project. So what happens? You have your business teams, you have compliance, you have finance, you have tech teams, all of them involved. Okay, so it's distributed ownership. Right. And in a distributed ownership, sometimes there is lack of clarity from a racy standpoint. Okay, like who actually is responsible, and we have seen that lead to challenges later on. Okay, because everyone is excited, but nobody's owning it up. Right. Like, so I think that's the first thing we are seeing. Why in a pilot. All. Second thing is, I keep saying this: you cannot win in AI until you win data. Right. So you need to get your data right. I mean, there is no point in building an AI system if the fundamental data sources are fragmented or unreliable. You need to fix that first. Okay. And customers are realizing that. We have seen customers who started in a little bit of urgency, then they realized that they need to fix foundations. Then they step back, fix their data foundations, deployed AI, and now they are seeing much better results. Okay, so we are really seeing that. And I think the third piece I really say is, what are the expectations in terms of outcomes? Okay, I think it's very important to be very clear on that, because starting with saying that, okay, in the first week, I will have a near perfect result from an outcome standpoint. That doesn't happen in AI systems, right? AI systems are meant to be deployed, and they're meant to learn from the outcomes and then use those learning mechanisms to make themselves better. Okay, so I think setting expectations right is also something very important that we have seen. And it's, I think the good ones, right? The successful ones always start with something very simple. They start with one use case, right? One process change, and how to deployment in that particular use case. See the wins, okay, and make it better until you get to a point where it's meeting the metrics that you wanted. Okay,
Yeah.
and it's performing better than completely human systems. Then once you have that, then you replicate. Right, like that is something that we have seen, real success happen, Sneha.
Got it. Got it. And Vijay, you spoke about this, this ownership issue because it's voice AI is fundamentally the use case is like a business problem that we're trying to solve, and sometimes it requires the involvement of, engineering, product, and so on. And of course, like BFSI institutions have been buying technology for decades now. But in your view of what you're seeing in the market, do you see voice AI as a build problem, buy problem in the minds of customers? How are they thinking about it?
That's a very good question because, like you rightly mentioned, BFSI historically has been a buy ecosystem. Of course, there are
Mhm.
entities which are starting to build platforms on their own. Interestingly enough, Sneha, I feel that voice overall is neither a buy problem nor a build problem. I actually think it's an integration problem, right? Like, and I'll
Interesting.
explain what I mean by that. See, as a bank or an NBFC, you can buy platforms. Okay. You can invest in technology and build differentiating capabilities. Okay. But what is really important is the technology, the platform, and how deeply integrated is it into your systems. Okay. Because, like I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, right, the systems are all across. We are talking literally in some cases decades and decades of systems which have been built. So the interconnection and seamless interconnection becomes super important. And along with that, the ease of access of customer data, business rules, and overlaying security controls on top of it, right? All these are super critical to getting it right. Right, like so the hardest challenges is not to buy or to build, is to how to integrate seamlessly and get it right. Okay, to me, I think those are the ones that industry is really looking at today, and the successful ones have been able to get that part right. They've been able to get the integration, security, and governance right.
Yeah, very, very interesting point. I think it certainly comes up in all our conversations with customers all
Yeah.
the time from day one. I think whenever we do any implementation, it's been BFSI integrations are certainly a sticky point to discuss. Let's talk about India for a bit in this context, right? Over a billion people, dozens of languages, and massive call volumes when we think about any industry, especially BFSI. How do you think that changes what's possible here compared to other markets?
See, I think we are in a very blessed place, if you ask me. Okay, honestly, I'm really, really happy we are in an ecosystem which has the kind of heterogeneity and variety that it gives us. Okay, not only that, we have digital systems which are far matured than possibly many developed markets today. Okay, today we are talking of several thousand crore of UPI transactions that happen every month. Okay, and that gives a very strong digital public infrastructure for us to ride on. Okay, so there is a hugely digital savvy population. The mobile and internet penetration is terrific. There is a lot of awareness in terms of digital systems and so on. Okay, so I think it gives a very strong foundation to start from, right? Like the ecosystem of UPI, Aadhaar, and linked to that, the DPI ecosystem that we have gives a very strong foundation to start from. Now, on that foundation, now you overlay the plethora of languages, okay, that we have, and the regional language pervasiveness is very important for BFSI success, right? Because naturally customers are there across the country and it's very important to reach them. Also, bringing the inclusion point that I spoke about earlier. Okay, so customers feel
Mhm.
included when spoken to in their native language, right? And voice
Mhm.
is the only ecosystem that can address that, if you were to think about it. And people are naturally inclined to talk than to type. right? I think that's a fundamental realization. So I actually feel, we are in a very, very blessed ecosystem, and the opportunity is massive, right? It's really massive, and especially outside the major urban centers. When goes into the one goes into the regional languages, I think we really have the opportunity to create something transformational for the world, right? Because they say you can achieve billion population scale in India. You can count in your fingers the number of countries where you can achieve that, right? Like, so when you're able to solve these problems at scale here, it's ready to be deployed really anywhere in the world. That's really how I see it.
Got it. Absolutely. I think if it has to be solved, I do believe it has to be solved in our own language with
Yes.
the multilingual context, switching between words within the sentence that India has, of course.
Yes.
Would you say, Vijay, India is ahead or behind globally when it comes to voice adoption in BFSI?
Okay. Are we ahead or behind? That's an interesting question. Um, I feel from a deployment maturity standpoint, we have still some way to go. Okay, not because of anything else,
Mm-hmm.
but more because of the fact that, say, English and voice in English started in the developed markets much earlier than where it started here, right?
Yeah.
Like, so they had the advantage of being early mover advantages there. So, and consequently, the ecosystem there is more evolved, right? When you're talking of English as a language. Now, I think now people are looking at, and English, of course, works for, let's say, countries like US, UK, etc. But when you come to Europe, naturally you have the challenges around other European languages, and voice is maturing there, right? Like, so I think in terms of deployment maturity, we have some way to catch up, but we are doing so. I actually feel that from an adoption potential standpoint, right, I think we are ahead. Okay, because there now the English ecosystems are matured, people understand what it is. It's in a lot of places it's become a cost game, right? But here now it is
Yeah.
about how can you perfect Bengali as well as you do English, right? Like it's those kind of challenges, and how can you make sure that, let's say Malayalam vis-a-vis Tamil vis-a-vis Telugu, those languages, are also scaled, and they get the level of accuracy where someone's speaking to an agent doesn't even know that they're talking to an agent, right? Like, so I think the adoption potential is tremendous here, and I think there we are ahead of pretty much any country in the world.
Got it. And Vijay, for any builder in the audience today, what would you say is the one thing they should get right from day one, while building for Indian BFSI?
Got it. I think the fundamentals of trust and governance stay very key, Sneha, because I want to reiterate the point I made that trust is what compounds, in BFSI, and I think it's very important to look at governance as an accelerator of innovation and not as a tax on innovation. Okay, because it is very important to be able to explain what the agents are doing. And I would really say that for any builder, please build with governance as to what one is building. Okay, so which also means that governance cannot be an overlay at a later stage. It's not that I build something and then I build governance on top of it. It is governance embedded into the systems, right? It's governance embedded into your architecture. For example, you're talking of identity access management, encryption, relevant guardrails, responsible AI. All of that need to get factored right from the start when one is building systems. And I think I would really urge every builder to be mindful of that.
Got it. Maybe last question,
Yeah.
as we are
Yeah.
almost at time,
Yeah.
what's your one bold prediction regarding Indian BFSI? What do you think um, this landscape of Indian BFSI voice agents would look like 2 years from now?
2 years from now, okay. um I actually feel right now one is seeing this voice AI as a channel, saying that, okay, now this is one another channel for institutions to go to their customers. I think we in these 2 years we will evolve to a point where it'll actually be an operating layer. Okay, so what I mean by that is today, for example, when you access your bank account through your mobile app, it's almost de facto behavior, right? You don't think twice about using technology to do that. I actually feel that we'll get to a point where customers won't think twice, before answering a voice agent call, responding, receiving recommendations, doing their transactions through voice. I mean, it'll be like a default behavior, and that's the beauty of it. Okay, so technology truly becomes scalable when it becomes pervasive, and I think voice AI has the single largest potential to get there, in my opinion.
Got it. Thanks a
Yeah.
lot for taking all my questions, Vijay. We will
Sure,
move on
Sneha.
to taking a few questions in the time that we have left from the
Yeah.
audience. And we'll see, I think some are for you and some are for probably us to answer.
All right.
Okay, for the first one, I think somebody had a question saying that, Indian BFSI typically runs on legacy stacks. But businesses are typically also pushing for fast AI deployment. I think this is a whole conundrum you spoke about earlier in our webinar today. So I think the question is, how do you quickly move without breaking fragile systems, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, that's actually a terrific question. Okay, and where we are seeing successful deployments are where our customers are saying, okay, now let me not go to the core systems. Let me look at systems which are there on the peripheral. Okay, so what you call as hollowing the code, right?
Mhm.
So on those peripheral systems, how can I embed these voice layers, right? So for example, so let's say a bank has 20 products. Okay, what you're saying is, let's start with one product. So let's say it's a gold loan product, right? Now in that gold loan interface, right, it could be through an app, it could be through the typical interfaces that a customer works with the gold loan product. How can I embed voice in it, right? So I'm not touching the core systems, and one product and one product at that makes it easier for me to integrate with those products. And possibly that one product has a separate loan originating system, loan origination. So then how can I work with it to deploy these, by which we're seeing customers work around this? So like the question naturally says, it's very difficult to touch core systems and move faster. So the smarter way would be to work around core systems, work with systems that are more flexible, more agile, and then use that to deploy in use cases and see success. And to my earlier point, which I made during the session, see success and then replicate. See success and then replicate. Smart strategy.
Got it. Great. I think to the point of the multilingual context of Indian customers, there are a couple of questions. I think somebody has asked about how do you go about comparing platforms for code switch, sort of like more multilingual inputs, outputs. And maybe I could share a little bit about how we test for that reliability at Murf. um, and I think there's another related question where somebody's asked that voice agents work for like Hindi, English, but then they start breaking down fast when it comes to like Bengali, Marathi, Kannada, Odia, so on. And how do BFSI organizations actually solve for regional language and dialect coverage, and not just like supporting it? I would let you sort of address that, and then I'll probably share a little bit about the testing part of it.
Just let's please go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, so I think on the testing side of it, I think we of course build our own models that gets deployed with Murf agents. We have our text to speech model called Murf Falcon, and we see this requirement from customers a lot for multilingual use cases. What we do there is typically, and what we would recommend any customer to do is look at your context, look at regional names, addresses, any context that you deal with. I think some of the common ones that we've seen across industries are common names, common street addresses, names of products, if you have any very, very regional products, that sort of stuff, alphanumeric conventions, all of that. And what we do is we run a test on those code mixed outputs and inputs for the agent to test on, even before any deployment or pilot sort of like goes live. I think that if you compare across multiple platforms, that's like a very, very good benchmark. I think we do have some benchmarks available for multilingual. If anyone is interested, we'd be happy to share that. But yeah, that's like the fundamental principle that whenever we think about deploying in, say, a context of a very regional language mixed with English and so on, we try and run extensive tests with sentences that carry these regional contexts. And that's how India speaks, right? We switch between multiple languages all the time, and we derive that accuracy for that language in that context of the customer. And I think that's fundamentally the way we go about measuring multilingual accuracy of our agents. Vijay, would you like to talk a little bit about how you've seen our banks in India sort of actually get over this problem of multilingual accuracy?
Yeah, so I think what is happening is, firstly, people are realizing that you're going to have different levels of accuracy benchmarks across different languages, right? Fundamentally, because the text-to-speech providers and the speech-to-text providers and the whole ecosystem of orchestration is still right, and going to get better over time, right? Like, so people understand that it's going to be a journey, right? It's not that it's not going to be perfect from day one, nor is it that it's going to be at this stage, right? We are already seeing instances of cost, performance, and accuracy across these regional languages improve over time, right? And thanks to players like you all, as well as Murf, you all are doing a bit in terms of making this ecosystem better in terms of model adoption, accuracy, and all of that stuff, right? So I think it's improving. I think the view that people are taking is that let me not start with all or most of the regional languages on day one, okay, because it's going to result in differing customer experiences. Let me possibly start with a smaller set of languages where there is a high degree of comfort in terms of their performance and scalability and accuracy. I will deploy that. I will deploy that reliably with voice agents, look at how the performance is, iterate, learn. And once we see success, then look to replicate across the other set of languages as well, right? Like, so I think the smarter thing is where people are realizing it's important to start with a focus set and then expand rather than trying to do most languages on day one.
Got it. Thanks, Vijay. Moving on to the next question. I think here's an interesting one. I think somebody has asked, is it better to disclose that the call is made by an AI agent or keep the ambiguity while trying to impersonate humans? How do Indians react to each scenarios, and do Indians actually prefer talking to an AI? What's your take on this?
See, I think it's like this. And I think the jury is out in the sense that and we are seeing different sets of data coming in, right? When it comes to the region to which the calls are going. Okay, so what, for example, what we are seeing is in urban centers or agglomerations, there is a higher degree of sensitivity towards agents, which means that the customers are able to discern between a human and an agent calling. Whereas when it goes to tier 3, 4, etc., and when people receive these calls, it could be in Hindi, it could be in English, it could even be in the regional languages, there is a higher level of, I would say, acceptance towards answering. And especially if you were to think about it, relevant use cases like loans. Okay, so where people need loans, and these calls are going to address those requirements. We are seeing that customers are fine with receiving these calls via agents. I think and they're responding as well. So we are seeing that behavior too. So whether in terms of does it makes sense to disclose upfront, the industry is not doing that right now, right? In terms of let's say it's not that when you pick up a call, it's saying that, okay, I'm an agent calling. That's not happening. The whole idea is for customers to feel as comfortable as they would feel as they're talking to a human. Okay, so right, so the idea is uh, the customer choice feels we will they go along this.
Got it. Yeah. I think we've also seen this, right? Like in use cases like loans. I remember one of the implementations that we've been doing for one of our customers, that they actually saw an uptake in in the qualification when, the AI agent was calling versus humans, which is sort of indicative of the fact that, in some of these geographies, it's actually quite amicable to sort of amicable for the end customer to talk to a voice agent and actually get that sort of whatever they needed done, right? Whether it's a loan qualification, it's a customer support query, whatever that is, right? So that's certainly promising. Whereas I
Yeah.
think in certain geographies around the world, we've seen some regulation come in with respect. And I think this question might be in the audience coming from that lens, that there are certain countries, I think, where we are expected to 100% disclose that this is an AI calling. And I think if that regulation does come in, of course, that'll have to be
Yeah.
the case.
True.
I think we have a question around banks and NBFCs using AI today to improve collections and recovery rates. Would you have any sort of broad statistics that you've seen in the industry in terms of improvements?
Yeah, I think is that the one with respect to our agents adoption good in non-English languages? So you're referring to that recovery rates as comparable to the human ones?
The
That one?
one I was actually referring to the question regarding improving
Mm.
collections and recovery rates.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's more for loans and that sort of
Correct.
stuff,
No, I think
credit
we are
recovery.
seeing collections to be pretty much the number one use case today, right? Because one, there are tangible metrics. It's a very important from an ROI standpoint, very traceable, and we are seeing that agents with the right level of empathy, with the right level of understanding about the customer, are even being empowered to suggest solutions on the fly. Okay, so basis the customer situation, the agent is able to suggest different scenarios to the customer to be able to get a level of recovery. Interestingly, right, we are also seeing the ability to embed agents with different tonalities basis the DPD. DPD, as we all know, is the number of days in which the loan has not been repaid, and obviously the higher the DPD, the longer that it has ensued since the customer has defaulted. So the tone changes basis that. The tone also varies depending on what the customer is responding to. So we are seeing collections as a very, very important use case for all these.
Got it. I think moving on, we had one technical question, which I'll quickly take up. When comparing platforms, everyone leads with accuracy and latency. Yes, that's true. What's the capability that doesn't come up in sales conversations, but that we'll regret not evaluating once we're 6 months into deployment? I think this is a very interesting one. And in my experience, I think I can say that most pilots need iteration. So that one big capability that, I would urge everyone to sort of look out for is how fast can the agents learn and adapt to your context, right? So any pilot, whatever, however well we orchestrate it, we always see that there is some learning. I think Vijay just spoke about how in collections the tonality needs to change to drive like a higher accuracy and effectiveness. That's like a nuance that you only come up with once there is a pilot in place, and there are things that we always need to fine tune. One of the things that is a feature that's coming up in in a few platforms, including Murf, is where there is like a judge LLM that actually evaluates the calls, that provides that feedback on what can improve, and that's like a consistent process that goes back, and there's that learning loop for the agent to do better sort of with every iteration of call. I would say that that's, in my view, one of the most important features today to drive it from a pilot to a production stage, because if you don't have that, we're going to be stuck in like that pilot loop. So yeah, whatever platform you're evaluating or looking to build, this is certainly one of the things that I would look out for sure. I think there are a couple of questions about the sales use case, which I believe we have briefly covered. Somebody's
Yeah.
asked how to use voice-based use cases for sales cycle. Do you want to throw some light on it, Vijay?
Yeah, so I think what people are seeing is that whether it's for cross-selling or for upselling, sales use cases are being very important, are becoming important, and I think the advantage again of agents is that I mean there is no fatigue, right? And it can intelligently pitch newer products to the customer basis the customer data, and it's able to track what happens after that as well, right? Like so we are seeing pre-sales and sales agents reaching out actively to the customer, and the ability to monitor what happens after that results in a higher degree of traceability. Okay, so I think sales agents will be there, will only increase as we get into this, as voice agents go deeper and deeper into the bank systems, right? The moment we have what we call the customer 360 view, where there is one view of the entire customer, then it becomes very important to be able to use these sales agents to intelligently pitch the right solution to the customer. Okay, so in fact, yeah, borrowing from the earlier conversation, I would actually say that agents will move from sales to advisory. Okay, so it's almost like having an agent co-pilot with you, which will talk to you and which will pitch the right product to you basis your needs. I think that's where we will get to.
Very, very interesting. Thanks a lot. I think we're almost at time. So what we try and do is, for the rest of the questions, we'll probably respond offline. Thank you everyone for joining in today and being so interactive, sharing all your questions with us. And thanks a lot, Vijay, for sparing time for this. It was a great, insightful chat for me, and I'm sure for the audience as well. And we look forward to sort of hearing more from you in the future. Thank
Oh,
you,
thank you,
everyone.
Sneha. Thanks to you, Sundar, Reed, Nayan, and the rest of the Murf team which put this together. And I must really compliment the audience that we had today. I think very interesting questions, very relevant questions, right? And which went into a certain level of depth. I really appreciate the questions that came up, and yeah, a great session. And look forward to more of these in the future.
Thanks, Vijay. Thank you,
Sure.
everyone, for
Thank
joining in
you.
today again.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.